record reflect we are back in session. Parties and counsel are present. All members of our jury or alternates are present. And Mr. McGee, you may resume your closing statement.
Thank you, Your Honor. Next thing I want to talk about was the testimony of Dr. Changshri. We always called her Dr. C. People call Dr. C, and Dr. C's purpose is to talk about the cause of death, obviously. She's the pathologist that performed the autopsy. What was unexpected was that the people didn't have her talk about the injuries. People tried to minimize the injuries in their questioning. When you got well, there wouldn't necessarily be laceration, open skin. Well, not necessarily. What they were trying to do was present to you facts that, well, yeah, these people were killed, no blood, because it didn't require lacerations. The government tried to misrepresent reality and avoid the facts. So I literally went into prosecutor mode. Let's go through this, Doc. Let's go through what happened to Joseph, what happened to Summer, what happened to Gianni, what happened to Joseph Jr. This was not a simple hit in the head, no blood type of killing. I did do some of the clips just to highlight with Dr. C. This is where she's talking about the injuries to Joseph McStay.
Now, if somebody suffered these amount of fractures in their skull that might result in laceration, how much blood would you expect to be around that body at the time of impact?
I will exactly quantitate how much blood, but it would be noticeable blood, it would be blood around the head and around the body.
And when we say blood, are we talking just a couple of drops, or are we talking it's starting to pool?
It's starting to pool.
This would be something that would be a significant amount of blood.
And significant dose of the second there will be a pool of blood.
I had her do the diagram, which I'm not going to show you again, showing where all the impacts were. I wanted you to have something to kind of understand her testimony and have something physical you can look at if you guys thought that was important. This goes on more about the blood flow from the attack again on Joseph.
Multiple strikes to the back, left, and the head.
Yes.
If after the first strike it starts bleeding, and you strike again, it'll have already started bleeding before the second strike, correct?
Correct.
So you'd be hitting not only the skull, the head, hair, everything that he had on his head, but also you'd be hitting the blood as well.
Yes.
So he was hit multiple times in the back of the head. He'd be bleeding after the first. So what does that come to? It comes back to Randy Beasley. When you're hitting a bloody surface and you hit it with an item, and he did it with his hand, you have blood spatter. That's how it happens. As she said, since there's multiple strikes, the first strike would start bleeding, and you hit there again, you're hitting the blood. There would be blood spatter. There would be pooling. There would be blood everywhere. We went on to Summer McStay and the injuries she suffered, and
So I'm showing you 366, and those are all the pieces of her skull that you were talking about, that since her skull was the pieces, correct?
Correct.
And so with this type of I don't know what the proper word would be. With this type of destruction, I guess, to the skull, you, as we're saying, you'd expect to see laceration.
With of trauma resulting in multiple pieces, I would expect lacerations on the skull.
And the premature skull was, they used to say, shattered.
Yes.
And this again would lead to the same type of excessive bleeding that we described with Joseph McStay.
It would lead to pooling of blood, such as Joseph McStay.
Again, all this blood would lead to blood evidence everywhere where these murders occurred. And be on the assailant, the ground, be cast off from the weapon being flung around. Could be on the ceiling, could be everywhere. Places you won't know it's there, but it's there. Since it'd be all over the assailant, anything the assailant's wearing, it'd be on those clothes. If there's blood on the floor and you're walking through, whether or not because you're killing people or because you're chasing people or you're moving people, whatever you're doing, that's going to get on your shoes, that's going to get into the car, that's going to get throughout the house, it's going to be moved onto the carpets, that's going to be done, moved everywhere. Transfer of that blood as well. Now, the people didn't bring this up. Prosecutor, you want to bring that up? Shows a violent scene. You want the jury to sympathize and empathize with the victims. This is what they went through. You want to get them on your side. But they skip that. Why? Because if there's blood evidence, their case falls apart. We can't have blood. So that's why they did not want that evidence to come out. Because it doesn't go with their story. So the next day is February 7th, that's Super Bowl Sunday. We know based on testimony of Agent Bowles, he was either at home or around Ontario Mills. Makes sense with everybody watching the football game. No activity to report. That wasn't even covered by the DA. The next fact, D, that they have to prove is that Mr. Merritt took the Isuzu Trooper down to San Ysidro on February 8th. So, we know Dennis Williams swabbed the trooper. We know that Don Jones compared the samples in the trooper. He said the major contributor steering wheel was Joseph. Ends up 80% of his DNA was on there. Chase was a possible minor contributor, making up about 20% of the sample. Summer was a trace contributor. Joseph was a major contributor to the gear shift. About 96% of his DNA was there. Chase's was about 4%. Now remember, during their opening closing, we don't even have proof that Joseph drove the vehicle. Mr. Doherty's opening statement says, we all know Summer drove the green truck and Joseph drove the white trooper. That's whose vehicles they drove. That's the drivers. DNA shows regular driver was Joseph. Well, they said, well, since his DNA's on the steering wheel, boom, he drove it. That's it. And then they said, it was funny, during the closing, that Chase would know the DNA the officers were going to find in the trooper, so he had to say he was in the vehicle. How's he going to know what DNA is in the trooper? Do you know what DNA is going to be found in a vehicle that's not yours? Makes no sense. His first interview on the 17th is when they do all the DNA swabs of everybody. It wasn't even tested by San Diego. First person tested was Don Jones, San Bernardino. 2014 or 15, I forget what year it was. They say, well, look, the DNA's in the trooper, we got him. Sure. Except there's that one thing. Science. Can't snap at this hand, I have injured hand. Science is a problem. Because all the scientific community studies that. And we went through that with Suzanne Ryan, we went through that with Don Jones. And they study how touch DNA is transferred, where it goes around. And the studies have shown that steering wheels get all kinds of DNA from not only the driver, but the people that the driver comes in contact with. It can't be a handshake, it just can't be touching something they touch. The studies show it's transferred all the time. And the studies also show if you're the driver, the last driver, and you drive at least 90 minutes, that you will be the predominant DNA contributor to that sample. It says if you drive 60 minutes, you will be at least a major contributor. And Detective DeGaulle says to drive from Fallbrook to the border is 90 minutes. So we would expect to at least see him a major contributor. He's not. So, since we know Chase was there on the 31st at the house, we know he was there on the 2nd, we know he was there on the 3rd, and then he met him with the 4th. He's in constant contact with Joseph. Makes sense he's touching things that Joseph is touching or shaking hands or whatever. And we went through the scenario, how does it transfer into the vehicle? Easy, you have the DNA on your predominant hand. When you get in, you grab the steering wheel. That's why it's 20%. When you grab the gear shift, it's only at 4%. Not a lot there, but there's enough. That explains how it got there. And is that reasonable? I don't know. Let's ask Don Jones, the people's expert.
My client's DNA being included, potentially included in the sample, would it be consistent that based on the amount of DNA there and the interaction you understand with my client and the driver, to be reasonable for you to conclude that this could be secondary transfer DNA in the vehicle?
It is a possible explanation for that observation.
Is it a reasonable one?
I believe it is reasonable, yes, sir.
Circumstantial evidence is what they're trying to use to put him in the vehicle as the driver. Their own expert, who tested the DNA and testified for them, said it's reasonable that it's secondary transfer. If you have a reasonable explanation that leads to innocence, you must follow it. It's not you can, it's not okay if you can, it's you must. He said secondary transfer is reasonable. There you go. Don't have evidence that he drove the vehicle down there. Then, what we got was a curveball in the evidence the DA was not planning on, is because they had that perfect window on the 8th. They had that 7:26 a.m. to 1:31 p.m. We have 6 hours. That gives Chase enough time to make that 2.5, 3-hour drive down to San Diego from the Inland Empire, take the car to the border, and drive back. We have our window. We have our opportunity. Well, that fell apart when they called Carmen Garcia. Carmen Garcia worked for Metro Sheet Metal. She was the office manager. And she was asked on direct about, did she see Chase that Monday?
And you had told Detective Smith at the time that Chase was actually at your facility when you told him that. He had come in physically, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And do you recall when Chase came into the shop that Monday?
Any more time?
Yeah.
No, I can't. Not right now. I can't recall. Maybe.
Well,
was addressed again.
And as you sit here today, you indicated you don't recall what time you actually saw him that day?
Yeah, I couldn't give you an exact time now.
Nothing further.
I believe it was morning or afternoon.
I believe it was morning. Maybe mid-morning.
With him being in Azusa mid-morning, their whole timeline's down, shattered. They didn't like that. Then we had a little fun at their expense. I came up and put, he was a Metro sheet metal on Monday. They didn't like that. Well, you're not sure, so I'm going to write not sure down below. Whatever. It's a little gamesmanship. But what happened is their case was falling apart right there. And they knew it because their window now is gone. Because he was there on the morning of the 8th. They don't have anything on the cell phone because he wasn't calling anybody or receiving calls, but they have an eyewitness, their witness. And what were they talking about while they were there? Well, they were talking about Joseph. And they were both talking about how they haven't been able to get a hold of him.
So, do you know how long Chase was at the Metro Sheet Metal facility on that Monday?
Not really. I remember he was sitting down talking to me, and we had some chairs there in the office area, and we were sort of chatting about, Joseph, not us, and we never get in touch with Joseph.
Remember, they did talk to her about, did he ever get interviewed or injured while he was at Metro Sheet Metal? Not that I know of. And they asked Joe that. No, not that I remember. But she's sitting in the office, and she didn't see any injuries to his hand that we'll talk about later from the interview on the 17th. He's not injured. So, he's out in Azusa. Remember, he's been looking around for parts. And where does he go after that? I don't know. There's no testimony of that. But we do have the testimony of the cell towers, which is Exhibit 481, from the 8th from Agent Bowles, and he shows at 131 and 133, he's near the 91, so he's coming in the 91 to the 15 northbound. That's from Orange County back to the Inland Empire. Azusa's out in LA, head down the 57 in Orange County, take the 91 back in. That shows the direction he's coming from. Not San Diego, Orange County. So not only do you have witnesses placing him not in San Diego, but you also have cell tower records showing where he is. The thing that always strikes me, though, is what day was Joseph and Summer and the two children buried when the keys for the Azusa were still in Joseph's pocket? I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. I don't know. What is interesting, though, is the government was afraid to verify that's what that key was for. Finally, when Sergeant Ryan testified, he just checked it that week before when he testified this year. So they've had the keys in the pocket of the victim to a vehicle of interest, and they never see if it worked on it. That is intentional blindness. You're looking for the truth. You're looking for facts. You want to put pieces together. Well, if the keys for the vehicle are in the victim's pocket, that doesn't match your scenario, so let's ignore that fact. Then they present this whole argument, well, the other keys in his pocket are of the same key. Really? I didn't hear testimony about that, did you? This is something new. Well, I'd love to have looked at those keys a little bit closer, taken different keys, give you notice that this is an issue, but they sandbag it and try and prove a fact without testimony to match some weird theory. Why are they playing games like this? Why are they trying to convince you with facts they haven't proven or brought up? Trying to pull one over on you. Use hatred and sympathy and not facts. This is a capital case of 4 victims. And this is the prosecution's actions. It's mind-boggling. So, we go to February 9th. Chase goes and contacts Susan Blake. She says, yeah, he came down to see me. He told her I was going down to the house to see what I can see down there. Started then. Something's wrong, Susan. This isn't right. I'm sure they're on vacation or something. No, Susan. Joseph wouldn't disappear like this. You should really call the police. I'm sure they're fine. Susan, he would be calling me. He would be calling me back. There's a problem. You should really call. No, let's give him a couple more days. Of course, as they said in their closing, well, when it came time to call the police, Chase was nowhere to be found. They know that's not true. He was pushing for Susan and Michael. Call the police now. Because he knew this was out of the ordinary, because he had the most contact with him. He wasn't returning his calls. He couldn't get a hold of him. He went down to the house, realized there was the issue. They weren't there. And what was he doing on the 8th and the 9th? He was making calls to QuickBooks. Why was he doing that? When I get to the 17th, I'll let his own words tell you what he was doing and why. Because he told the detectives. The interview that they played. Now remember, their big theory is he's going to write checks on QuickBooks, cancel QuickBooks, and he can get away with it. How? All checks go through a bank. All transactions go through a bank. You cannot delete the transactions in the bank's clearinghouse. They will have copies of all checks. They have copies of all transactions. Their theory is that my client is stealing money and deleting QuickBooks to get away with it. That makes 0 sense. And we can prove he did it because here's all the checks, ladies and gentlemen. We can prove because here's his thumbprint on the check. We can see his signature on the check. We can check, yeah, all the physical evidence that is impossible to delete. Everybody knows that. How is deleting QuickBooks getting away with something? Their theory makes 0 sense. So let's see. We go to February 13th. That's when Michael McStay and Chase go down to the house together. Michael testifies, or the closing says that Michael testifies that Chase did not go in the house. The defense team implored with me to play that clip of the video where Mr. Moline crosses Michael, where Michael has to admit, you know, I don't remember him going in the house. Well, here's the police report where you said he did. Do you remember this? I don't remember saying that, but I believe the report. You went in the house. I don't remember that. but it's in the report. I see that here. I said he went in. I'm going to believe the report, but I just don't remember it. I think he was being honest there. I think he was trying to say, I really don't remember him coming in, but if I said it to the cops then, I don't think the cops are going to lie. That's Michael being honest and fair. He went in the house. Of course he went in the house. They tried to make a big deal that he wouldn't go in the house. Even Michael admits, yeah, maybe that's not right. We'll fast forward to the 15th. See how easy that was? I had to play that whole clip. Fast forward to the 15th, that's when the welfare check is made. Finally, Michael says, you know what, you're right, I'll call. But I'm going to do it on Monday. I'm going to give him one more weekend. And he calls on the Monday, and they say, well, meet us at the house. And he goes down to the house, and he meets Deputy Tingley. And he takes the pictures of the house that we went through, the search. Again, showing you the drawers, the paper, stuff all laying out. Here's the cup of coffee, calculator, all the stuff laying around. Trash on the floor. You can see the dirt on the floor here. It's just dirty. Of course, a murder happened here, right? Then they cleaned up, and then they made it dirty again. The bedrooms, there's no blood anywhere. Bedrooms, yes, it looks like they're camping in the house, yes. No blood anywhere. After this, Susan and Michael go into the house. Michael takes the computers out. Susan cleans up. They asked Detective Tingley when he went in, did you smell anything? No, I didn't really smell or notice anything. Susan, did you smell anything when you first went in the house? Yes, I did. What did you smell? Rotten food and diapers. You smell paint? No. I didn't smell paint. I smelled rotten food and diapers. Michael, do you smell anything? Smelled something. He described something of trash or rotten food or something. I forget what it was. Nobody said paint, but DeGaulle. Why? Because DeGaulle is part of the prosecution team. He knows what theory they need him to stay. There's paint. There's cleaning up. So, I smelled paint. Well, nobody else did. I mean, Susan, amazing memory. What color was that? White? That's not white, sweetie, she told Raj. That is, what was it? It's Apache white or whatever she called it. She knew the exact colors of everything. This was 9 years later. She had all those down. She's not going to forget about smelling paint if she smelled paint. Their own witnesses are showing that they're trying to manipulate the facts, present a false case to you. So then, it's interesting. You know, Susan's cleaning the house. Michael's trying to see what's going on. He's trying to be helpful. But they are still talking to one another, amongst themselves. And then we get to the 17th when Chase comes in and talks to detectives. And I'm kind of going to do this backwards. Is first they say, well, aha, you killed them because you referred to them in the past tense. That's their smoking gun now. And instead of playing that part, do you think they were dead? Well, I tried not to think about it. Okay. Mikey and his mom kept saying, things like that. Susan and Michael feared the worst, but hoped it wasn't true. Do you have any knowledge or information indicating they're dead now? The reason I asked is because you referred to them in the past tense. And people technically don't do that. Any explanation as why you would have done that? No, not really. You understand why I'm asking? Well, of course, of course. I completely understand. Never really even thought about it as possible. Well, I can't say that. I can't say I haven't thought of him as possibly being dead. This is the 17th. It's been almost 2 weeks. Not hearing from him. Of course you're going to start fearing them they're dead. You're going to start talking to them that way. The warrant that was written to get in the house was written, and I asked you all about that. They were looking for dead bodies, evidence of death. This was not a missing persons investigation. This was a missing persons investigation and a homicide investigation both. That's why they brought cadaver dogs to the house. They were looking at evidence of death, violence. Okay, I hate doing this. I really do. I apologize for this. In the beginning of this interview, a lot of things are covered. It's covered of Chase making the decision to talk about, they said that Chase killed the family because he hated Son. Chase killed the family because he didn't agree with how she was raising her kids. That's literally the argument they made at closing. I think you should spank your kids, and to show you're wrong, I'm going to kill you, your kids, and your husband. He literally said that to you with a straight face. And there's all this talk about, we found this information about QuickBooks, and he was writing all these checks, and he's stealing and fraud and everything. In the first 15 minutes of his interview, Chase talks about all this. And I hate doing this, but I think we have to. I'm going to replay those first 15 minutes for you. Please don't kill me. I will play the audio, and I will put the transcript up on the screen so we don't have to hand them out. Oh, I just did that. Now I gotta close it and open it back up. Oh, that's why. Why am I not seeing that here? Close that. Maybe that's why it's not working. What is this doing? So I want. Apologize, people. There we go. Oh, that's why this is messing. I'm on extended screen. Okay. There's a transcript. It's not responding. Okay. Looks like this is not going to happen. Okay, so I'll do it the old-fashioned way. So they thank him for coming down for his decision to talk. The first thing he talked about is he was concerned about him having that warrant, which I addressed in the opening statement. And they still said they appreciated him coming. Okay. He says, listen, I really want to come down here and get this information because I'm worried about Joseph. And as he said in his colorful words, my little shit shouldn't really stop me from doing that because I care too much about Joseph. So I'm going to come down. If you're going to arrest me for my warrant, fine. But I got to give you this information. Because if I can save Joseph, I'm going to do it. So they say, we appreciate you coming down. I know you say you'll take care of it tomorrow. You can see it at the bottom. Yes, I'll take care of it tomorrow. Well, we appreciate it. And they start talking about the place, trying to get the other police there. They talk about the Saudi Arabia jobs because they're kind of reviewing the notes that he wrote for Detective DeGaulle, and they're kind of going over them. Yes, we had the Saudi and Paul Mitchell job going. These are big jobs. We met with you guys, and we were going through it on Thursday around noon. Yes, we're at Chick-fil-A. Where's that? They start talking about, oh, that's right next to the Wendy's where we went to the bathroom. Perfect. I'm going to turn that off because I keep doing that. And we're going to try and take DNA kits. We're bringing those down here. We're going to take a swab. That's fine. You guys can do that. Here's where he talks about his felony warrant. Thanks for going to arrest me. Don't worry. Just go take care of it. There we are. More of that. And then they're going to talk about, this is where he says, I really had to decide to come down here. I talked about it with my wife, and I decided that my little bullshit and this felony warrant is a lot less important than Joseph and his family. He knows he can't put it off another day, because if he puts it off for a day and then something that could have happened, that I could have told you could have helped you found him later, he would have been heartbroken. It's like, I'm going to come down and help you. Then they start talking about the issues, let's see. Talking about Joseph going down to Metro Sheet Metal a couple times. Yes, he did. He went down there, and you saw Joseph on the 4th. Yes, we talked about the Saudi Arabia. We talked about those different things. They said, was that on Saturday? And he goes, no, SA was Saudi Arabia, not Saturday. All those are the accounts. Those are the two projects we're in the middle of. Again, we're talking at Chick-fil-A. And then was Mikey there? No. Have you ever met Mikey? Yes, I met him. And he talks about how Mikey and Summer didn't get along because Summer said something about Mikey's wife. Mikey liked calling Summer Heather. Oh yeah, Mikey told us about that. They were real verbal against each other. He said, yes, we understand. That's how they were. You don't have to, you're being very nice how you're explaining it. We know how it was. Talked about here how Summer and Susan also had a disagreement at one of the parties. So it was making clear that they knew Summer liked to be vocal with people. And to say, well, Chase is the only one that didn't like her or had argument with her would be wrong. Summer was a person that wore her emotions on her sleeve. And to say this is an anomaly, it's not. It's common. So they're more talking about them not getting along on that. Then it comes down here to, let's finish this thing. Line 18. Payments to Metro. You got checks and you went over when to write them and went over when to write. Yeah, when to write the checks. Okay, and then you talked to him. I talked to him about QuickBooks. Online. Decided to delete and start QuickBooks Pro 2010. This is DeGaulle talking. Yes, we came to that agreement. Okay, and he gave you a credit card to purchase it. Yes. And you did the credit card. I just know I did it for the QuickBooks and that was it. I just wrote down I got rid of it. Okay. And when did you do that? Did you do it prior to the 4th? No. 2 or 3 days before the 4th is actually when I bought QuickBooks. What all this does is say the detectives weren't brilliant in finding all this stuff about QuickBooks. What it was is, lo and behold, he's been up front with it since day one. Did they even bother listening to the interviews? Because since day one, he said, yeah, Joseph gave me the checks, told me when to write them, and then told me to switch QuickBooks. This is from the beginning. Another part of this, let's see, it's this one. Oop. Is that right? No. There's too many things open here. Okay. Another thing he says during this interview is they ask him about Dan. This one I can play. This one I embedded in.
You really need to talk to the candidates. And only over the last week, I never talked before this happened with Joseph. I never talked to Dan ever. I didn't even, I knew of his existence. I knew his role in Joseph's business. I knew that Joseph was almost paid him off, and I think he was paying him $50,000 for his part of the business. I think that was the number. I'm not even sure about that, but I know that he only had $2,000 left to pay him. And Joseph was going to then own Earth Inspired Products and just pay him to run the website instead of them being partners. Because up until he paid him off, he was going to be a partner. I know that. So we talk about that all the time. Because Joseph was always afraid. 7 months ago, Joseph and Dan had a spat. I don't know exactly how deep it was or anything. But it was 6 or 7 months ago, I think. Maybe 8 months, I don't know. But they decided at that time that Joseph was going to pay him for his part of the business and for what he had done to build the websites and stuff, because apparently Dan is extremely adept at website building, and he's like a big hacker from what I got it. Even from him personally, when I talked to him over the last week, I was talking to him the other day, and he said, I said something about him knowing the web, and he said, yeah, I'm not a person that you want to piss off on the web. That type of thing. I said, yeah, I know Joseph told me that there's a lot you can do, and you can shut the website down, because Joseph was afraid that he was just going to push the button on the website and be off, because that's what Dan said. They were, when we clashed, Dan said, look, this is what I want. I don't have to continue working this website. And so Joseph made a deal with him to buy his part of it, because I know Dan wasn't making enough money. I don't even know what it was, but I know a while back they decided that they were going to buy, Joseph was going to buy him out, and then he was just going to run the website. That's the extent of it that I know of.
How this comes into everything, Mr. Moline will address. I'm not going to go much more into Dan. You heard this as part of those 2 days of playing his statement. Well, I'll go on. Next fact. Fact E, the murders of the McStay family happened in the Fallbrook house. This is what they're still going with. And that somebody cleaned up. There was the search of the house. There was no signs of forced entry. There's no signs of violence. The house was messy. The furniture was dusty. The floors were dirty. The carpets were dirty. Bathrooms were dirty. It was in renovative state, but there was no blood and no signs of cleaning up. There was dirt and dust on the ground. There's trash on the ground. There's trash everywhere. There's no signs of pooling, no signs of anything. And, they talk about all this bleaching, but what about all the dirt and the dirt around this, the dirt on the bottom of the floor in that room, carpet, no blood. Again, I went through all this in detail. Here's the empty roll of the blue tape that ran out, so they used the yellow masking tape to tape off, so there's that whole surprise of, oh my God, there's a change. Yeah, it's sitting right there. It tells you that's what they were doing. There's no blood anywhere here, none on there. There's just trash laying around. Even got the cabinets taken out of the kitchen, put over here. This is a disarray of the house, the taped off, the dirt, the cracks in the linoleum, all this stuff to where blood could be. It's not anywhere. Anywhere. Everything's still taped up. It's dirty. There's not a sign of violence anywhere. There's carpet or something everywhere in the house, every room, that would catch that pooling that Dr. C testified about. It's not there. Oh, he painted. How do you paint carpet? It's stained with blood. It's stained with blood. There's no getting rid of that. There's the shoe prints I talked about earlier. Here's the pulling up the linoleum back in the corner. There's still pine needles back there from the tree, from the Christmas tree that's taken down. How do you, kill somebody, clean up, and put the pine needles back down? The idea that this was done here is just ridiculous. Here's the loose linoleum. Blood would seep everywhere through here. Here's all the dirt everywhere. Everywhere. There's just everything here. The dust all over that part. Here's the carpet. It's just all upstairs. Found that little red spot on that book. That's right here. Also, that's number A. That's not blood. That's something else. There's no blood in the garage. It would be on the concrete. It'd be on things that are there. You can't really walk through there without bumping into everything. There'd be that transfer from moving a bloody body. It's just not here. They're replacing the floors. So there would have been no tarps down the floor to say, oh, this is like Dexter, where their old thing's tarped up, and that's why there's no blood, and you just throw all the tarps away. No, they were getting rid of all that. So they didn't need to care about what the state of the linoleum or the carpet was. And there's no blood on those boxes either. To say, or try to stand here and say, somebody cleaned up in that house, and that's why they couldn't detect it, is just nonsense. They want the defense to prove a negative. One, you can't prove negatives. Two, we don't have to prove anything. What evidence did they show you that it was cleaned up? A clean area. Sparkly white floor. They didn't show any of that. The burden's on them. Not to let you speculate or guess. Oh, what was he doing on the night of the 5th? He doesn't know where he is. Is he cleaning up? Or he's sleeping like everybody else. They never gave a window for sleep. 24 hours a day, I guess. He's killing, cleaning, running around off the grid. These arguments are ridiculous. And then, of course, what do they do in the middle of trial? Let's get good old DeGaulle. He's on our team. Mr. DeGaulle, what do you see on this table? Oh my God, I was devastated when I saw the blood. It looked like blood. Looks like blood. So I had to have Mr. Beasley go through the whole thing explaining why it's not blood. Pictures would show it different. It would be rised up. We had the right angle on the table pictures. Oh, we didn't look over here. Same thing was all the way around. He didn't disprove our made-up theory that we didn't test for. Remember, whole detective team sat around that table. They didn't see anything. And all of a sudden, we need it. We need you to say there's blood there now, dude. Pull it out for us. Make it up. But we sat at that table for hours. We worked there. It's covered in dust. Doesn't matter, dude. You just got to say it. All right. But our criminals, who are our blood spatter expert, actually measured the table. Well, we just skipped that. Okay, but our crime scene person that walked around and took all the pictures, she even took pictures of the table, and she didn't zoom in on those spots and say, oh my God, we had something here. We can ignore that. Let's just ignore all the common sense, and we're just going to fly with this one because we need it. because we're desperate. We're losing. We don't have evidence against Mr. Merritt for murder. So let's start our smear campaign. Let's do a character trial on him. Let's make the jury hate him. Mr. Molina will again deal with that. But what do you have on major evidentiary problems that they're not solving? It's not his vehicle in the video. He wasn't fired. After the video, the family's still alive and doing stuff. Likely taken on the morning of the 5th. Chase isn't there. We buried the family on the 6th, but we're burying him in the rain. That makes no sense. We drove the trooper down to San Isidro. Oh, but his window to do it is no longer available. I'm sure they'll say now, well, it was in the nighttime. Okay, well, your last contact with him is at 6:26. They identified the car at 9:18, I think it is. There's not enough time to get down there in the evening, so that's out. We'll just save them time later when they try and argue that later. If any one of these problems survives circumstantial analysis, we win. Not guilty. That's where you start. If I ask you now, what do you say? We say not guilty. Why? Because it's not guilty until you're proved otherwise. They haven't proved anything to you. They haven't proved any of those points, let alone one of them. And why is all this going on? Because of confirmation bias. They want it to be him. So they're going to cherry pick, they're going to make up stories, they're going to twist facts. Taillights are not going to be taillights. You name it. We're going to do it. And we're going to say whatever we want because we arrested this guy. And we got awards for arresting this guy. We got promotions. They're all sergeants now. If they admit they made a mistake and arrested the wrong guy, how's that going to look? This is a national case. There's been press releases. There's been shows. They've made promises to the family. Don't worry, we got him. We got him. How do you go back to that family and say, we might have messed up? This case is brought forward not on evidence, but on egos and pride. Throw it up and see what sticks. It's a line you hear in the halls of the DA's office at times. It's disgusting. Throw it up and see what sticks. Because they have no skin in the game. If they're wrong, they don't go to jail. Nothing happens to them. There's no risk. Let's put this pressure on 12 people. So we don't have to follow through on the responsibility and the power we have when we arrest and charge people to maybe say we got it wrong. We're not going to do that. No. That'd be adult and responsible. Let's pass that responsibility off to 12 jurors, let them acquit, and then we can wash our hands of it. They really, really, really manipulated this case for you. They didn't call Lenny Rudin once he changed his testimony. They called Ryan Baker for the QuickBooks testimony on the 9th, but they did not call the person that received the call on the 8th. Did you pick up on that? Ryan Baker says, well, it was so odd to me that somebody wanted to delete it when they didn't want to transfer it. That would be normal. Well, when he called on the 8th, he said he wanted to transfer. Why didn't they call those people? We had to call them. Why are they trying to manipulate the facts to make people hate him? They're hiding the truth. They didn't call David Cicada Sr. They didn't call anybody who's going to replace Chase if he's fired. And then we're pointing the finger at Dan. They didn't call Dan. Why not?
Objection. Violates court's orders.
They could have called Dan. It's logical. They should have called Dan. But they call his girlfriend instead. We would have had questions for Dan based on just that question. What was the problem between you and Joseph? They knew about that interview. They played it for you. Well, we don't want to open that can of worms. Let's hide what's really going on here. Dan, why'd you sell a company that MacGyver said you were bought out of? Why isn't he charged?
I'm going to object. This violates the court's orders previously. Ask the jury be admonished to disregard that.
Jury isn't scared to disregard the law's comments.
You talk about him writing checks when Dan stole money through PayPal. I'm sorry, this is Roger's stuff. I should probably not go into that. About the computers. Oh, look, there's all this stuff on the computers. Oh, Detective Schroeder, explain it all to him. Hey, Detective Schroeder, you mean if you use this program, wouldn't you find out it's actually computer system work and not human work? Oh, yeah, sorry about that. Oh, I have to correct my testimony. The story they wanted me to sell, because it goes with their theory, actually is wrong. Yeah, I have to admit, I made a mistake. Oops. The phone messages. Remember, they're making a big deal about the phone messages. There's no messages from Chase to Joseph. He says he called, but there's no evidence to support it. DeGaulle had to testify. We checked the phone messages, and all of them were related to after I put out the press release. After he first got involved in the case on the 15th. Chase stopped calling Joseph after the 9th, because he couldn't find him. All his messages would have been from that period. What? I knew I had one more thing I wanted to play for you. Oh, it's missing. Okay. The problem is when they called Michael Basilo, the pleasant man from Texas. Remember him, the older guy, the bald guy, ex-police officer, very simply spoken, big Dallas Cowboys fan. We asked him about the cell phone records. And I was like, well, you're the member from T-Mobile, you're the custodian of record. And I asked him, in 2010, can somebody else with a T-Mobile account call in to your voicemail? Yes, if they know the code. Can they delete them? I don't know. They can call into the voicemail. What if you don't have a T-Mobile account? Say you have, and I asked them Verizon. Should have asked them AT&T, the one that Chase had. Can you call in? He goes, no, not in 2010. Only T-Mobile customers can call in to another T-Mobile customer's voicemail. Joseph had T-Mobile. Dan had T-Mobile. There's no more phone calls from Joseph's phone to go into his voicemail to erase them. The only person that had the opportunity to do that attached to this case is Dan Kavanaugh. Why do we not have phone records? They were deleted, apparently. Why were they deleted? I don't know. We'd want to ask the person who has the only opportunity to do it. Let's ignore all those. Ignore those facts, ignore those problems, ignore the law. Just hate, chase, and convict them because we made a decision. They didn't search for the truth. They're not searching for justice. What they're trying to do is uphold their decision because they can't admit they're wrong. For you to reach a guilty verdict, everything I just said to you on the facts, you have to say, Mr. McGee, you were wrong on every single one of them. Great argument, Mr. McGee, but no. We're saying they got it close enough. They didn't tell us anything about it, but close enough. This case screams for not guilty. This case screams for Mr. Merritt to be acquitted. Justice demands it. So, I don't know, maybe San Diego can pick this case up again and get that family justice. Because what we have here in this trial since October has not been justice. It's been a fraud. And that's what you have seen. Prosecution has been nothing but fraud and not a strong case. The part of the motive, I will move my time over to Mr. Moline to cover that. I don't know if the court wants to take a break now so he can set up and do that after lunch or...
All right, we'll go ahead and take our, we'll recess it at this time till 1:30. Keep in mind the admonitions previously given to you, not to form or express any opinions about the case, not to discuss the case, and we'll see everyone back at 1:30. Reflect we are still in session. All of the jurors have left. Counsel and parties are still present. Counsel wanted to be heard on something?
I do, Your Honor. This court made some very specific rulings about not allowing either side to comment on the absence of Dan Kavanaugh being called as a witness. This court allowed defense to call Gary Robertson to testify that they could not find him, and the basis for that was because their investigator had looked for a few months, and the court said that they would allow that neither side would be able to comment on the absence of Dan Kavanaugh being called as a witness. And that's exactly what defense just did.
Well, I think potential failure to call potentially logical witnesses is a fair comment on the evidence, and certainly the people can respond that the defense had an equal opportunity to locate and call Mr. Kavanaugh.
That was the whole basis, though, for this court allowing Mr. Robertson to testify to those facts. this court ruled that neither side could comment on that. We pointed out the fact that there was a jury instruction related to that. And the court said that you understood that, but you were going to prohibit both sides from making those comments. And that was the basis for allowing Mr. Robertson to testify.
All right, well, apparently I did not recall that, and I allowed the argument, so certainly the people can respond that the defense had an equal opportunity to locate and call Mr. Kavanaugh as well.
I would like the court to uphold its previous ruling and admonish the jury that they're not to consider that.
That was what the court indicated, that because we said they're going to do it anyways, and the court said, well, if they do it, then I'll admonish them in front of the jury.
Because this is exactly what we knew would happen.
Maybe you can find that in the transcript.
Absolutely.
And I'll be happy to look at that.
Well, the one issue, will make the record clear. One, I wasn't part of any of this conversation. Obviously, I was off sick at the time. So that's clear. Two, when I made objections to different things that could or could not be argued by the people should have reminded the court and make sure I knew, well, you can't argue this. If I would have known that, I wouldn't argue. I wouldn't have violated the court's order. But as the court said, it's reasonable to say you didn't call these reasonable or logical witnesses. That's a standard practice in closing. That's an ethical practice in closing, and that's all I did. If I would have known Dan Kavanaugh was off limits, that would have changed my approach. And I would not have brought him into the loop. But since I didn't know, how can you now admonish the jury to make it look like I violated an order that I didn't even know about?
Since when does the defense not have an obligation to find out what the court's rulings are because he's not here?
All right, well, let me look at the transcript and I'll consider that.
The other concern I have is counsel's intentional violation of 8.4C of the Rules of Professional Conduct. Repeatedly, through Mr. McGee's closing, he ascribed conversations to people, including prosecutors, eliciting false testimony. That is a fact or a statement without factual basis. It was intentionally and recklessly made, repeatedly through his closing, and the court sat by and allowed it to happen despite an objection. I think the court also needs to remedy his insinuations that the people engaged in unlawful activity, which he said in front of this jury, manufactured evidence, when he has no factual basis to support that argument. That is misconduct. That is reportable to the State Bar by Your Honor, who sat here and listened to it. Well, and to ascribe actual conversations regarding that is impermissible, and for this court to allow that to happen and allow it to influence the jury, because that's what it was designed to do.
Well, I think it's not an unusual defense tactic to suggest that there is a bias on the part of law enforcement and the prosecution for whatever reasons once an initial decision is made to arrest someone to see things in that light, and that they ignored evidence, they manufactured evidence. I don't think that's an unusual defense argument.
And I would agree with the court on those arguments, but that's not what Mr. McGee said. He specifically attributed to the prosecution team and law enforcement specific conversations to change testimony, to elicit specific facts, to hide evidence. Those specific conversations, that's what's misconduct. To make the generalized arguments that the court has referred to is proper and can be done. However, the court sat by and allowed specific implied conversations to be put forth to this jury that Mr. McGee knows he has no factual basis to support. That is reckless, and that violates 8.4 of the Rules of Professional Conduct, which the court is obligated to enforce.
Well, I think that's better dealt with in your rebuttal argument.
But it's not proper for us to argue the Rules of Professional Conduct to the jury, considering they don't know what those rules are, and that's not in evidence. Again, like the conversations were not in evidence.
Obviously not to argue the rules of professional conduct, but to argue the merits of what was suggested in the argument.
just for the court's reference, page 7670, line 5 through 9. Mr. Imes said, so the court is implicit in that ruling is forbidding either side to make in closing argument the argument of failure to call logical witnesses as to Mr. Kavanaugh because it would be speculative. The court said yes, comma, is. And then Mr. Imes interrupted the court there. I think the court said, I think they're entitled to put on their attempts to locate him, but it's limited to that.
All right, so I didn't recall that. So now that they've done it, all I can do is,
I think we need to continue reading the transcript because the court continued because we specifically raised the issue that the defense has violated court orders on numerous occasions, and the court addressed that.
The court on page 7672 says, well, if that were to be violated, I would definitely correct the situation in front of the jury.
Which you did not.
all right. Well, I guess I'll leave the decision to you. You can either address that in argument, suggesting they have an equal opportunity to locate and call Mr. Kavanaugh, or if you want me to instruct the jury that since Mr. Kavanaugh could not be located, it was improper for either side to make reference to not calling him. I'll do that.
And as part of that, can the court highlight that Ms. McGee wasn't here for that conversation?
No.
What was the page 2, by the way? I want to double check. 7670 and 76. Double check all you want.
All right, we'll be recessed until 1:30.